Okay, let's continue with our discussion. Why English? So we have been talking about, is it because of the power of its speakers, or is it because of the number of its speakers? Now we are talking about, is it because of words? In other words, it's because of lexical stock. So does it have something to do with its words, its language, its lexical perspective? Let's take a lexical perspective. So in this regard, we have discussed that English language is a result of its relationship, its contact with the different people and different languages. So now we are going to take a mental voyage about this one. So let's get started. Here, the English. So what was the first contact with the foreign people? Of course, that was Roman. So it was Roman Empire. The Claudius arrived at Britain here. Then it left about 450. That means that British people spent about 400 years under Roman conquest. So, of course, what's the impact of the Latin language? The Latin language is here, for example, devil, and altar, angel, and Holy Ghost. These are the examples of the Latin words left, because the Latin people, the Roman, they brought a Christianity into the British people, and also the British people at the time, the Celtic people, they learned the Latin, and these are the Latin words traces left in English language: devil, altar, angel, Holy Spirit. You can see that most of the Latin words left in English has something to do with Christianity. So that was the first conqueror. Then who was the second conqueror? Second visitor is here. You can remember that was Vikings. So it was about 2 centuries. The Danish people, they continued to attack, that they continued to harass the British people. At first, they plundered the monastery in the north, in the northern area of British Islands. Of course, that their language was Old Norse, and the examples of Old Norse left in English was skin, skull, egg, husband, and sister. And also, who was the third conqueror? Of course, it was Norman. You see here, Norman. And so, what was the Norman impact in English? On the lexical point of view, the verb, there are about 10,000 verbs that have been introduced in English. So the English verb, have been simplified by the influence of the Norman French. And also the Arabic words came into English language through French. For example, the amber, and orange, and saffron. So this is what? This is what we have studied. We have already discussed this one. So in this regard, that the English word is a result of importing from different culture. It was imported words from French, Latin, and Viking. So it was while the English language remained a local language of British people. Now we will start with the global trade of English. So English start is global spread around the world. So let's get started with India, South India, Southeast India. So Of course, it started with the London merchant, the commercial interest. They built a company, and its name was British East India, and it was established 1600 at that time. And then, of course, there was a two-way process importing words from India. So there were certain Indian words that came into English. It was curry, or juggernaut, and pundit, and pajama. These are the examples. The curry is food. The juggernaut is a very great person that you respect and admire. Pundit is a man of honor and knowledge, and pajama is Indian dress. So you can see there is also the Indian words that have embedded into English. So what is the next? Then after it was arrived in the America, so there was a contact with the native Indian. So it was, of course, the importing of native Indian words that came into English. So what are the Indian words that came into America? The India, native Indian. Powwow. So this is powwow. Powwow, and the most significant Indian word that came into the English is caucus. Actually, the caucus exists only in American English. In British English, there is no such word as caucus. Caucus came from the native Indian, that is, means a group of supporters. It's a meeting with a group of supporters for a political meeting, for a political party. So the caucus is very unique that only in American English, and it's very ironic that the American, a country of democracy, they adopted this word from native Indian, because this is a new word. This is a word for the supporters, for the economic part, for the political party, but in European or British society, there was no such word. So American, they adopted the caucus from native Indian to refer to a meeting of supporters or meeting of advisors, consultant for a political purpose, so caucus. And also there is some interesting word. So this is mogwamp. This is Indian, native Indian word. Mogwamp. Mogwamp means a person that has politically independent. He does not support any particular political party, but he is independent. He is wandering around across the different parties. So he has no supporting political party. That's who he is referred to as Mogwamp. Mogwamp comes from the Indian, native Indian. And also there is another word like moose and Indian summer, raccoon, and these are the words. Indian summer is a very cold, it's cool and sunny and bright day of like the late autumn weather. So these are the words that they found its way to English word. And what else? There is Africa. Africa. Actually, it was already 1559 that the African slaves, they began to be shipped to the Caribbean and the American shores, that African words began to also arrive in the American English. For example, okay, and banana, and bogus. This came from Africa. So, okay has some different nuance from country to country. So for native speakers, for example, the British people say, okay, there is some faint approval. So that is a weak disapproval. So, but when, okay, non-native speakers say, okay, there is no negative nuance. It is okay, it's fine enough. So anyway, it's interesting to see the banana or boga. It sounds very modern, but it sounds very American, but however, actually it came from Africa. And how about Dutch? So we have talked about Dutch language. Dutch could have been the major language of the America if the Dutch people used the original inhabitant of New York City, but it was militarily conquered by early colonists. So Dutch has left its traces in English. So Dutch, what are the Dutch words? Cookie. So Dutch words are cookie, Harlem. As we know, the Harlem is the area or district of northern New York where the African Americans are living, the Harlem. So Harlem is Dutch word, and Bos and Yankee. Yankee is referring to the early colonists who used to inhabit in the New England. And the Yankee, and also Santa Claus. That is the Dutch words. So let's move to Spanish. Of course, the Spanish could have been the official language because there is a lot of Spanish that used to occupy the Texas and the South and the West America. So there is a lot of Spanish inhabitants there, and there are many Spanish words that they have come to English. Barbecue. Chocolate. And avocado, and tomato. So it's interesting that these are the name of foods that often come from the Spanish language: chocolate, cookie, avocado, and the tomato, and barbecue that came from Spanish. So also we can mention Australia here. Australia. It was about 1700 that James Cook arrived there. Then there was a new word for British captain, and British captain was looking around. British captain was exploring the new land in Australia, and they found some animal who was popping around. He has never seen that. What is that? And the Aboriginal said that is the kangaroo. So there was something that he has never seen in his homeland back in Britain. So he had to name it after the way the native people called it. For example, the kangaroo boomerang. In Australia, the Aborigines, then they have very unique ritual for children. If they have some ritual for a child to celebrate to become an adult, that was a ritual, and he was allowed to go around and walk around by himself in the forest. He must spend by himself. That is as a sign to celebrate to become his adulthood. That was walkabout. So walkabout is a walkabout is a ritual for the native people in Australia that celebrate has become his adulthood. So this is a ritual. That is walkabout. So it became into English. Then after it become English word, it has a little bit different nuance. For example, walkabout is kind of king, and he just goes down and he walks around and he meets the ordinary people. Or the high politicians, they're walking around with and mingle with ordinary people. That is referred to as walkabout. So this came from this Australia, walkabout. And also boomerang is something hunting instrument. So it was unique. It can be found in Australia. If you throw it at, and if you throw it at, then it will return to you. This is a boomerang. So this came from the Australia, and also there is a unique word. It's larrikin. So this is unique, larrikin. So this is an interesting word. So this came from the Australian larrikin. That is Australian concept of referring to the rogue. He's kind of person who is kind of violent, but he's willing to speak up against authority. He can challenge the power. So he doesn't care about the power, and he's, in a sense, he's very courageous, and he can stand up against authority. So larrikin. So Australian. We need some cultural background of Australia. Australians, their ancestors was the convict in London, so they tend to be flat in terms of power. So they are not afraid of the power. So larrikin, maybe Australian people tend to tolerate the larrikin. So this is interesting word from the Australia. Larrikin. So I think that cost most of the. Then there is interesting contrast between British English and American English. British, American English. Here. So it began to diverge between that it came from the British language. But for example, there is a different words. For example, the American English is hog. American English is a hog, but British English is a pig. American, they say rooster, and it is a cock. And Americans say it is mad, but British say it is angry. Americans say it is fall, but British say it is autumn. The Americans say it is car. Americans say it's automobile, but British say it is a car. So it's interesting. The British usually use the car, but Americans, they tend to use the automobile. So they call the automaker. GM is automaker, and Chrysler is automobile maker. But British, they hardly use the word automobile. So actually the automobile comes from French. But the car, they say that it came from Old English. So that is a carrot. So they say this comes from the Old Anglo-Saxon words. So British tend to stay with the Old Saxon English, Old English, but American English, and when it comes to car, they use the French word automobile. So that is interesting contrast that refers to the automobile or car sometimes. So this is a very interesting comparison between American English and British English. And also in American English, there is something that British English does not have. That is Wild West English. American, they thought they have faith that they continue to its extension to the west. So they have some, they respect the pioneership. So the extension of territory made, so that was the Wild West period. And also in the Wild West period, you can imagine the picture. There was a Texas cowboy. Texas cowboy, they were gathering hundreds of thousands of cows, and they are gathering in that. They put it in the car, and they send away to different states, and they sold them out. So there was a group of great ranchers. And there's so many cows. So the ranchers, they had to find a way to distinguish their own cows from the other ones. So there was a Texas cowboy, Samuel Mabry. Samuel Mabry is the name of a Texas cowboy. He was one of the biggest ranchers in Texas. He had hundreds of thousands of cows, and they gathered together and they sent it away to another state and they sold them. He was very rich. So he was thinking how to distinguish his own cows from the other ranchers. Then he had an idea. He put a stamp. That says the Mabry on the cows. He put a stamp, Mabry. So if you see a stamp on the living cow, there is a Maverick, then everybody says, that is a Maverick's cow. Maverick's cow. So the Maverick, now it enters in the dictionary. So Maverick means someone who is different, someone who stands out, someone who differentiates himself from the others. So outcast, kind of outcast. So Maverick. So actually it was the name of the rancher who find a way to distinguish his own cows from other ranchers. So this is an example of, so we can see that the English has imported the words from the Roman Empire and the Norman French and the Viking people. They imported the words. Then it began, this is happened when the English remained a local language. Then there starts a global spread of English. Then English began to go to the India, Southeast Asia, and there they also imported the Indian words like curry, juggernaut, pandit, pajama, and they imported from India. And also the global spread and the English spread to America. So they met the native Indian, and they saw the strange animals and plants and some meeting and some ritual there that was unique to native Indians. Then the early colonists adopted the Indian words and used it as English. So this is how the American English began to be different from British English. And these are the words that American English, only you can find in American English, but you cannot find in British English. For example, these are the powwow, caucus, mugwump, moose, Indian summer, raccoon. These are the example of Indian words that came into American. So this is only for the American English. And also the American contact with Africa dates back to the early of 1550. So during that time, the slaves, they brought their words and they settled as English words like okay, banana, and bogus. Then how about Dutch? Dutch used to only inhabitants of New York, so they left many words in the English in the cookie, Harlem, Boss, Yankee, and Santa Claus. These are the traces of Dutch words in English. And also English also spread to Australia. Then when it comes to Australia, there was something ritual or animal that exists only in Australia. There was kangaroo, boomerang, there's a hunting instrument, and was Australian native people's ritual to celebrate the adulthood walk walkabout, and larrikin is a word that reflects the Australian culture that is flat, and he tolerates, Australian people tend to tolerate someone who stands up against power and authority. And also in the French language, then also there was significant impact of French language and English. First of all, the English verb was simplified. There were many weak verbs, and also there are many French words that came into English. For example, like the perjury, justice, attorney, and prison. You can find that these words have something to do with the law. So these are the French words. They came into English word. So also the Spanish words has a lot of influence in English, and Spanish words and barbecue, chocolate, avocado, and tomato. And these words made its way to English. So to sum it up, the English is in the result of importing. English is constant contact with different languages and different culture and different people. And this is what makes the English very unique. English is not a result of the British people. So it is it's a result of a dynamic constant with the different people. And it's not only for the local trade, but also the global trade. English was moving around the world. So English is a mixture of different culture and different languages, and that's what it makes it strong, and that's what it makes it very unique. Because in human history, no other languages has been so much so widely spread into this continent. English is in Africa. English has spread to the South Pacific. English spread to the North America. English spread to Asia, and also it has not only imported the foreign words, but it also has exported its words and its language to foreign countries. So this is something our textbook author David Christus said this is a unique event that has never happened in the linguistic history, and this, especially the global trend of English, is a contemporary phenomenon. So it has happened since the 1920s. So this all happened. Of course, this is a centuries long of process. Even though there are some recent unique event, but we can see that English is not made over several decades, but English is a result of a centuries long of a contact with the different languages. So we can see that why English deserves to be the global language. Is it because of the power of its people? Yes, probably so, but that's not the whole story. Then we move to the second question. Then is it about the number of its people? Yes, probably it makes sense, but that's not the whole story. So we followed the next. We brought up next question that it is because of the lexical stock. Maybe that could be one of the reasons. So these are the three elements they put together, and they combined together, and maybe that could make English and strong enough in the global society. So we have talked about this lexical. So lexical stock. So then we will continue with this PowerPoint, so that we can go one by one here. So Let's continue with the next session. In the next session, why English? Is it because of its Mexican stock? So English was an importer of word from its visitors or conquerors. So English from Celt, English from North, Old Norse, and English from Norman French. This is what we have talked about. The English words from Norman French about law or court, justice, perjury, attorney, prison, parliament, and prince, baron, and duchess. They come from the French language. And also the English word that came from Arabic language that came from through the France, sang, amber, saffron, sang, dime, apache, Cajun. Cajun means some referring to the Louisiana people or offspring of French people. And this is the English words from native India. So for example, Wickham, Tahama, Cherokee, Mohawk, raccoon, skunk, woodchuck, moose, Indian file, Indian summer, and going on the warpath. Happy hunting ground. As I said, caucus is a meeting of supporters or members of particular political group. So this is only found in American English, not British English. There are many English words from native Indian, keeping one's ear to the ground, or scalp hunting and scalper, or sending out smoke signal. As I said, mugwump. So actually, that used to be the one Indian tribe, so they have no support political. It does not decide its position in the political party. So someone who is indifferent to politics. So smoking a pipe of peace. So also we talked about the English from Dutch. So Harlem, Brooklyn, Bronx. It means both cocktail or some administrative district of northern New York. Cookie, stoop, waffle, poppycock, scow, patron, caboose, boss, Yankee, Santa Claus. And English words from Spanish via Caribbean. So this is barbecue, tobacco, tomato, chocolate, avocado, marijuana, coyote, taco, pancho, adobe, cafeteria, plaza, canyon, and creole. So English words from Africa, the banana, okay, and the bogus. And Indian words from India, so curry from Tamil. It was first recorded in 1598, and juggernaut and pandit, and pajama, and bungalow. And English words from Australia, kangaroo, koala, boomerang, walkout, chaff, credit crunch, baby boomer, and free fall. So English words of diplomacy came from French, détente, démarche. And French was fashionable and sophisticated to say coquetry, diplomacy, haute couture, chic, savoir, je ne sais pas quoi. A new layer of English, honor and chivalry. And Norman French and English words about law, governance, and the rank from Norman: justice, perjury, attorney, prison, parliament, prince, baron, duchess. So impact of Norman French on English was the language was simplified. So the weak verbs, what are the weak verbs? The words that has the ed ending, that ends in ed, the suffix ed is applied when they shift from present to past. For example, help, the past tense is helped. Work is the past tense is worked. Pick is past tense is picked. So this is weak verbs. But what are the strong verbs? Strong verbs is the verb change irregularly. It's a tense change irregularly. Clean, clung, light lit, sell, sold. So after Norman period, there was more of a weak verbs. So these are the, they start with the global trade of English. English spread to America. Then there was American English begin to appear. Then they were separated by common language. These are the examples, the difference between British America and American English, British English and American English. So these are the words. Only you can find the American English, and on the right, these are the words you can find only British English. So these are the words from native Indian: skunk, uduchak, moose, powwow. Powwow is a very fashionable word. Actually, it used to be a meeting for the native Indians, but now it's often referred to as a meeting, so powwow. Maybe it sounds with this sound. It sounds very interesting, powwow. And Indian fire, Indian summer, burying the hatchet, going on the warpath, happy happing ground, keeping one's ear to the ground, speaking with the forked tongue. This all came from the India, native Indian. So these are the words, the American words that are not used in Britain: emog, wamp, and totem, or polak, and caucus. So these are the words from Spanish: cannibal, canoe, hammock, barbecue, tomato, chocolate, avocado, plaza, Africa, banana from Guinea. And Africa, these are the words from Africa: banana, okay, from West America, Boga. And also I'd like to add here, there is some, the African American, I would say African American. African Americans, the white Americans, they began to adopt the African Americans' words. For example, it was in 1920s. There was, would say that the Harlem Renaissance. So at that time, the African blacks, they were used to northern district of New York, and their culture begin to pay, and the white American begin to pay attention to their culture. So they begin to be interested in the words that the African Americans were using. At that time, it was the 1920s. So they call the Harlem Renaissance. So the white Americans, they begin to speak the words, they begin to use the words the African Americans were using. For example, then these words found they were into the dictionary. So these are actually the words of African Americans. For example, the jib and chick and hype. And these are the examples they used. So I'd like to wrap up this session of class. This is about the lexical richness. As you will see, American words have been enriched and refined. As a constant contact with the different words, there is vocabulary will continue to expand it. And also, it was a result of observing a different culture, like Dutch and Spanish and Australian and the native Indians. All linguistic varieties of words merged, combined into English. And this makes English very strong and unique and powerful. And this strengthens its future possibility to remain so. So let's take a break.